I'm done with you. I've found someone better. The words hit me like ice water, and I just stood there in the middle of the restaurant where Trevor had asked me to meet him. My birthday dinner, he said. There was nothing special about watching your boyfriend of 2 years tell you that you weren't enough anymore. Trevor, what are you talking about? I managed to ask, probably sounding as confused as I felt. He leaned back in his chair with this cold smile that I'd never seen before. Come on, Jasper. You really thought this was going anywhere? I need someone who can actually afford things, someone who doesn't work 3 part-time jobs just to make rent. My hands gripped the edge of the table because maybe if I held on to something solid, this whole nightmare would stop spinning. But you said money didn't matter. You said we were building something together. Yeah, well, I lied. He shrugged like he was discussing the weather and not destroying everything we had. Bennett's family owns half the commercial district downtown. He drives a car that costs more than you'll make in 5 years. Why would I settle for instant noodles and secondhand clothes when I could have everything? The other diners were starting to stare, but Trevor didn't care. He actually looked proud of himself, like he'd accomplished something great by humiliating me in public. Today's my birthday, I whispered, hating how small my voice sounded. I know. He stood up and tossed some cash on the table. Consider this my gift. Dinner's paid for. Eat whatever you want. Maybe it'll soften the blow. Then he just walked out, leaving me sitting there with curious eyes boring into my back from every direction. The waiter approached nervously, asking if I wanted to order, but I couldn't stay there another second. I grabbed my jacket and practically ran out of the restaurant into the cool evening air. Okay, so that was probably the worst moment of my life at the time. If you're already hooked, kindly do me a favor, leave a like and subscribe so I know you're with me. The story gets way better from here, I promise. And now, let's dive back in. The park across the street was empty except for a few joggers, so I found a bench hidden behind some bushes and finally let myself fall apart. Everything hurts. My chest felt tight and my eyes burned, and I couldn't stop replaying every moment of the past 2 years, wondering which parts were real and which were just Trevor pretending until someone richer came along. Are you all right? I looked up to find 2 men standing a few feet away, identical in every way except their expressions. One looked concerned while the other seemed more curious than worried. They were both tall with dark hair and these sharp features that probably made people stop and stare wherever they went. I'm fine, I lied, wiping at my face with my sleeve. The concerned one moved closer but kept a respectful distance. You don't look fine. Did something happen? My boyfriend dumped me. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Ex-boyfriend. He dumped me on my birthday because I'm poor and apparently not worth his time anymore. The curious twin made this disgusted sound in his throat. What an absolute waste of space. Who does that? Someone named Trevor, apparently, I muttered. They exchanged a look that seemed to communicate entire conversations without words. Then the concerned one sat down on the bench beside me, not too close but near enough that I didn't feel quite so alone. I'm Felix, he said, gesturing to his brother. That's Flynn. And your ex-boyfriend is an idiot. A complete idiot, Flynn agreed, moving to sit on my other side. Anyone who judges people by their bank account isn't worth crying over. I laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. Easy to say when you're probably not struggling to pay rent. Fair point, Felix admitted. But that doesn't make what he did any less terrible. We sat there in silence for a moment while I tried to pull myself together. These strangers didn't need to deal with my problems, but something about their presence made the crushing weight on my chest feel slightly lighter. Can I ask you something weird? Flynn said suddenly. Felix shot him a warning look. Flynn, not now. No, hear me out. Flynn turned to face me fully. How would you feel about pretending to be our fiancé? I blinked at him, certain I'd heard wrong. You're what? Our fiancé. He repeated like it was the most normal thing in the world. See, our family has been pressuring us to settle down for months. They keep arranging these awkward dinners with potential matches, and it's driving us crazy. But if we show up with someone we're already engaged to, they'll back off. That's the weirdest pickup line I've ever heard, I said slowly. Felix rubbed the back of his neck, looking embarrassed. It's not a pickup line. Well, maybe it is. But Flynn's right about our family being unbearable. And you look like you could use a distraction from thinking about your terrible ex. Plus, we'd pay you, Flynn added. Enough to cover your rent for several months, probably more. All you'd have to do is attend a few family dinners and pretend to be madly in love with us. This had to be some kind of joke. People didn't just offer to pay strangers to be their fake fiancé. Things like that only happened in movies or those dramatic stories people posted online. Why me? I asked, because nothing about this made sense. You could probably find anyone willing to do this. Because you're genuine, Felix said simply. We've sat through dozens of dinners with people who only care about our family name and money. But you're sitting here crying over a relationship that ended, which means you actually cared about someone beyond what they could give you. And you're cute, Flynn added with a grin. That helps. Felix elbowed his brother hard enough to make him wince. What Flynn means is that you seem like someone our family would actually believe we'd fall for. You're real, not polished and fake like everyone they usually try to set us up with. I should have said no. This was clearly a terrible idea that would probably blow up in all our faces. But sitting there on that bench with my life in pieces around me, the offer sounded like exactly the kind of chaos I needed. How long would this last? I asked. 3 months, Felix said. Long enough for our family to see we're serious. Then we can stage a mutual breakup and everyone goes back to their normal lives. And you'd really pay me enough to cover my rent? 3 months rent up front, Flynn confirmed. Plus expenses for any clothes or things you'd need for family events. We're not expecting you to do this for free. 3 months of not worrying about money. 3 months of not working myself into exhaustion just to make ends meet. 3 months of maybe, possibly, proving to Trevor that I wasn't worthless just because my bank account had more zeros than dollars. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll do it. Flynn's face lit up like I'd just given him the best news of his life. Really? You're serious? I must be crazy, but yeah, I'm serious. Felix pulled out his phone and handed it to me. Put your number in. We'll work out the details tomorrow when everyone's thinking more clearly. But thank you, Jasper. You're saving us from months of awkward family interference. I typed my number into his phone, still half convinced this was all some weird dream brought on by birthday-related trauma. When I handed it back, Felix smiled at me with such genuine warmth that something in my chest unclenched just slightly. Happy birthday, by the way, he said softly. I know it didn't start great, but maybe it can end better. Much better, Flynn agreed. How do you feel about ice cream? There's a place 2 blocks from here that stays open late. I don't have much money on me, I admitted. Our treat, Felix said, standing up and offering me his hand. Consider it a birthday present from your new fake fiancés. I took his hand and let him pull me to my feet, feeling Flynn move to my other side like they were both determined to keep me from falling apart again. We walked through the park toward the main street, and for the first time all night, I felt like maybe I could breathe properly again. The ice cream shop was bright and cheerful, decorated with colorful murals and strings of lights. Felix ordered chocolate while Flynn got some complicated mix of flavors that made the server laugh. When they asked what I wanted, I picked strawberry because it was simple and I couldn't handle making complicated decisions right now. We sat at a corner table away from the few other customers, and Flynn immediately started asking questions about my favorite movies and books and music. Felix chimed in with his own questions, and before I knew it, we were talking like old friends instead of strangers who'd met less than an hour ago. So what do you do? Felix asked between bites of his ice cream. Besides work 3 jobs that your ex didn't appreciate. I'm studying graphic design, I told them. The jobs are just to pay for school and rent. I work at a coffee shop in the mornings, do data entry from home in the afternoons, and stock shelves at a grocery store 3 nights a week. Flynn whistled low. That's exhausting. When do you sleep? Not enough, I admitted. But it's temporary. Once I finish my degree, I can get a real job and stop running myself into the ground. What kind of design work do you want to do? Felix leaned forward with genuine interest in his eyes. Nobody ever asked me about my actual dreams. Trevor certainly never had. He'd always changed the subject whenever I brought up my future plans, like they were boring or not worth discussing. Book covers, maybe, or album art. Something creative where I can actually make things that matter to people. I stirred my melting ice cream around my cup. I know it sounds stupid. It doesn't sound stupid at all, Felix said firmly. It sounds like you actually care about what you do. Flynn nodded in agreement. We run a marketing firm that our parents built. It's successful and we're good at it. But sometimes I wonder what we would have chosen if we'd had complete freedom. What would you have chosen? I asked. He thought about it for a moment. Photography, probably. I like capturing moments and making them mean something. I would have been a teacher, Felix added. Elementary school, maybe. I like kids and the idea of helping them figure out the world. There was something sad in the way they both talked about their alternate lives, like they were mourning paths they'd never been allowed to take. I understood that feeling completely. Why didn't you? The question came out before I could stop it. Sorry, that's too personal. No, it's fine, Felix said. Family expectations are complicated. Our parents built their company from nothing, and they expected us to take over. Saying no would have felt like we were throwing their sacrifice back in their faces. So you just gave up on what you wanted? Flynn shrugged. We make it work. The company does well, and we're not miserable. But yeah, sometimes I wonder what might have been. We finished our ice cream while talking about everything and nothing. They told me about their family, carefully explaining who I'd need to know for the arrangement to work. Their mother was particular about manners and presentation. Their father cared more about whether people were honest and hardworking. They had a younger sister who would probably see through the whole thing immediately, but wouldn't say anything if she liked me. This is a lot to remember, I said, feeling overwhelmed by all the information. We'll help you, Felix assured me. And honestly, just be yourself. That's what will make this believable. By the time we left the ice cream shop, I felt steadier than I had all evening. Felix called a car to take me home, refusing to let me take the bus this late at night. Flynn made me promise to text when I got inside safely. We'll call you tomorrow, Felix said as the car pulled up. Sleep well, Jasper. I climbed into the back seat and watched them through the window as we drove away. Two identical strangers who'd somehow turned my worst birthday into something almost hopeful. The whole thing still felt surreal, but I couldn't stop the small smile that crept across my face. When I got home to my tiny apartment, I found a message on my phone from an unknown number. Felix had already transferred the first month's rent into my account with a note that said, "Down payment on saving us from family chaos." I sat on my secondhand couch and stared at the number on my screen, watching it sit there like proof that maybe the universe didn't completely hate me after all. The next morning came too early. I'd barely slept, my mind spinning with thoughts of Trevor's betrayal and the bizarre arrangement I'd agreed to with two strangers. My phone buzzed while I was getting ready for my coffee shop shift. Felix, good morning. Are you free this afternoon? We should probably talk through the details. Flynn, and get you something decent to wear for family dinner Friday. Felix, Flynn, subtle. Flynn, what? I'm being practical. I couldn't help smiling at their messages. They texted like they talked, finishing each other's thoughts and bickering like it was their natural state of being. Me, I'm free after 2. Where should I meet you? Felix, we'll pick you up. Send us your address. The coffee shop shift dragged on forever. My coworker Mira noticed I was distracted and kept shooting me concerned looks while I messed up orders and forgot to refill the sugar containers. You okay? She asked during a rare quiet moment. You seem off today. Trevor dumped me last night, I said, keeping my voice low so customers wouldn't overhear. Her eyes went wide. On your birthday? That's so messed up. I'm sorry, Jasper. Yeah, well. I wiped down the counter unnecessarily. Turns out he was just using me until someone richer came along. Good riddance then. Mira bumped my shoulder with hers. You deserve way better than someone like that. If only she knew about the twins and their fake engagement offer. But I kept that part to myself because explaining it would require energy I didn't have. Felix and Flynn picked me up right at 2 in a sleek black car that probably cost more than I'd make in several years. I climbed into the back seat feeling underdressed in my coffee-stained work shirt and jeans. Rough shift? Flynn asked, twisting around to look at me. Long shift, I corrected. Where are we going? Shopping first, Felix said from the driver's seat. Then we'll grab food and go over everything you need to know. The shopping district they took me to was full of stores with names I recognized from magazines, but had never actually entered. Every window displayed clothes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I can't afford anything here, I said as we parked. We're paying, remember? Flynn opened his door and waited for me to follow. This is part of the arrangement. You need clothes that will fit in at family dinners. But this is too much. Felix came around to my side of the car. Jasper, if you show up to meet our parents wearing something that doesn't fit their expectations, they'll make comments. Lots of comments. We're trying to make this as painless as possible for everyone involved. He had a point, even if I hated accepting expensive gifts from people I barely knew. We spent the next 2 hours going through different stores while Flynn pulled out shirts and jackets and pants for me to try. Felix had better taste, steering me toward things that actually looked good instead of just expensive. You have a good eye for color, I told him as he handed me a dark green sweater that somehow made my eyes look brighter. He smiled, looking pleased. My mother insisted we learn about fashion and presentation. It's one of the few lessons I actually enjoyed. By the time we finished, I had 3 complete outfits suitable for fancy family dinners, and Felix had promised to take me shopping again if we needed more. I felt guilty about the money they were spending, but they both insisted it was necessary. We grabbed food from a casual restaurant and found a quiet corner where we could talk without being overheard. Felix pulled out his phone and showed me pictures of his family members while explaining who was who. "This is our mother, Victoria," he said, pointing to an elegant woman with sharp features and perfectly styled hair. "She's particular about everything, but especially about manners and how people present themselves." "She sounds terrifying," I said honestly. "She can be intimidating," Flynn admitted. "But she's not cruel, just very focused on maintaining the family image." Felix swiped to the next picture. "Our father, Robert. He built the company from nothing, and he's proud of what we've accomplished. He'll ask you questions about your work ethic and goals." "What should I tell him?" "The truth," Felix said. "He respects honesty more than anything else. Tell him about your jobs and your degree. He'll like that you're working hard to build something for yourself." They showed me pictures of aunts and uncles and cousins, each with their own quirks and personalities I'd need to remember. Their younger sister Violet was in college studying architecture and apparently had a talent for seeing through lies. "She's going to figure out this isn't real," I said, feeling anxious. "Probably," Flynn agreed. "But she won't say anything if she likes you. And she'll like you because you're not fake and pretentious like most people our parents try to set us up with." We spent another hour going over basic information about their lives that I'd need to know. How they'd supposedly met me at a gallery opening 3 months ago. How we'd been dating secretly because we wanted to make sure it was serious before involving family. How they proposed last week during a quiet dinner at home. "Why both of you?" I asked. "I mean, why are you both pretending to be engaged to the same person?" Felix and Flynn exchanged one of their wordless looks again. "We've always done everything together," Felix said carefully. "When we were kids, our parents treated us like a unit instead of individuals. It stuck, I guess. People expect us to find one person and settle down separately," Flynn added. "But that's never felt right. We want to share our life with someone, together." I absorbed that information slowly. "So when this fake engagement ends, you're actually looking for someone who wants to be with both of you?" "Eventually, yeah," Felix said. "If we can find someone who understands." "That's got to be difficult." "Extremely." Flynn stabbed at his food. "Most people either think it's weird or they're only interested in the money and status. Nobody wants us, just what we represent." I thought about Trevor and how he'd only valued what I couldn't give him. How he'd thrown away 2 years like they meant nothing because someone richer came along. Maybe the twins and I weren't so different after all. "For what it's worth," I said quietly, "I think it's brave. Knowing what you want and not settling for less just because it's easier." Felix looked at me with surprise and something else I couldn't quite name. "Thank you. That means more than you know." The rest of the week passed in a blur of work and stolen moments texting with Felix and Flynn. They checked in constantly, asking about my day and making sure I was eating properly and not working myself too hard. It felt strange having people care about my well-being after so long with Trevor, who'd barely noticed when I was exhausted or stressed. Friday arrived faster than I expected. Felix and Flynn picked me up at 6, both of them dressed in expensive suits that made them look even more intimidating than usual. "You look great," Felix said when he saw me in one of the new outfits. "I look like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not," I muttered. "Fake it till you make it," Flynn said cheerfully. "That's what we're all doing tonight." The drive to their parents' house took 30 minutes, winding through neighborhoods that got progressively more expensive until we pulled up to an actual mansion with gates and a circular driveway. "This is where you grew up?" I asked, staring at the enormous house. "Unfortunately," Felix said. "Try not to let it intimidate you." Inside was even more overwhelming than the exterior. High ceilings and crystal chandeliers and artwork that probably cost more than I'd earn in my lifetime. A woman who had to be victorious stood in the foyer, watching us approach with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You're late," she said to the twins. "By 3 minutes," Flynn replied. "Mother, this is Jasper." "Jasper, our mother." Victoria studied me with an intensity that made me want to squirm. "So you're the one who's captured my son's attention." I was beginning to think they'd never settle down. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Chun, I said, grateful my voice came out steady. Victoria, please. Come in, dinner is almost ready. The dining room could have seated 20 people comfortably. Robert Chun sat at the head of the table, a solid man with graying hair and the same sharp features as his sons. He stood when we entered and offered me his hand. Good to finally meet you, Jasper. The boys have told us quite a bit about you. All good things, I hope, I managed. They certainly seem taken with you. He gestured to the chairs. Please sit. Dinner was a complicated affair with multiple courses and more silverware than I knew what to do with. I watched Felix and Flynn carefully, copying which fork they used and when. The questions started almost immediately. So how did you meet our sons? Victoria asked. I launched into the rehearsed story about the gallery opening, trying to sound natural and not like I was reciting lines. Felix jumped in with details about which paintings we'd discussed, making it sound real enough that I almost believed it myself. And what do you do for work? Robert asked. I'm finishing my degree in graphic design while working 3 jobs to pay for school and rent, I said, deciding to follow Felix's advice about honesty. It's exhausting, but temporary. Robert looked approving. Hard work builds character. What kind of design work interests you? We talked about my goals and his experiences building his company from nothing. He told stories about the early days when he and Victoria worked 18-hour days and lived in a tiny apartment above their first office. Victoria softened slightly as he talked, and I realized they were more complex than their intimidating first impression suggested. Why 3 jobs? Victoria asked. Surely 1 or 2 would suffice. Rent is expensive and I don't want to take on more student debt than necessary, I explained. I'd rather work hard now and have more freedom later. She nodded slowly. That's sensible. Too many young people expect everything handed to them without effort. Flynn caught my eye across the table and smiled, tiny and encouraging. We were making it work. The younger sister Violet arrived halfway through dinner, breezing in with paint-stained hands and an apologetic smile. She took one look at me sitting between the twins, and her eyebrows shot up. Well, this is interesting, she said, dropping into her chair. I'm Violet, the overlooked youngest child. Hardly overlooked, Felix said dryly. Your mother's favorite. Only because I don't cause chaos by showing up with surprise fiancés. Violet looked directly at me. So Jasper, tell me something true about yourself. The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Something real, not rehearsed or designed to impress. She leaned forward with curiosity in her eyes that reminded me of Flynn. Like, do you cry at movies? Are you scared of spiders? What's your biggest irrational fear? Violet, don't interrogate the poor boy, Victoria said. I'm not interrogating. I'm getting to know him. Violet kept her attention on me. Well, I cry at movies, I admitted, especially the ones with dogs. And I'm terrified of deep water even though I can swim fine. Something about not being able to see the bottom freaks me out. Violet grinned. See? That's real. I like you better already. The rest of dinner passed more easily, with Violet steering the conversation toward normal topics instead of interrogation. She told stories about her architecture projects and complained about difficult professors. Robert talked about a new client the company had landed. Victoria critiqued the meal, even though it was perfect. By the time we finished dessert, I felt wrung out but successful. We'd made it through the first test. You'll come to Sunday brunch, Victoria said as we prepared to leave. It wasn't a question. We'd love to, Felix said smoothly. In the car on the way back to my apartment, I let out a long breath. That was intense. You did great, Flynn said. My mother actually smiled at you. That's practically a miracle. Violet knows, I said. She definitely knows this isn't real. Probably, Felix agreed. But she played along, which means she approves. That's what matters. They walked me to my apartment door even though I insisted they didn't need to. Felix waited while I unlocked it, then handed me an envelope. 2nd month's rent, he said. You earned it tonight. I just had dinner with your family. You survived dinner with our family, Flynn corrected. That deserves hazard pay. I laughed despite my exhaustion. Thank you. For all of this. It's strange, but not terrible. High praise, Felix said with a small smile. Get some rest. We'll see you Sunday for round 2. I watched them walk back down the hallway, already bickering about something I couldn't hear. When I finally closed my door and looked around my tiny apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. The sense that my life might be heading somewhere unexpected but not entirely unwelcome. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I opened it to find a text from Trevor. Trevor, I heard you moved on fast. Good luck with your new relationship. You'll need it. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling the familiar hurt try to claw its way back up. But then I remembered sitting in that restaurant being humiliated, and sitting in the park crying, and Felix and Flynn finding me in my worst moment and offering something better. Me, thanks. I don't need luck when I have people who actually value me. I blocked his number before he could respond. The next few weeks fell into an unexpected rhythm. Felix and Flynn picked me up for family dinners every Sunday, and slowly I stopped feeling like an imposter wearing borrowed clothes. Their family was formal and complicated, but they were also real people with their own struggles and hopes. Victoria softened toward me gradually, especially after I complimented her garden, and she spent an entire afternoon showing me her prized roses. Robert started asking my opinion on design elements for company projects, treating my input like it actually mattered. Violet became something like a friend, texting me random observations and inviting me to her gallery shows. But it was the time with Felix and Flynn outside of family obligations that surprised me most. They started showing up at my coffee shop between shifts, ordering complicated drinks just to keep me company during slow periods. Flynn would edit photos on his laptop while Felix read books and occasionally looked up to smile at me. We'd talk about nothing important, but it felt important anyway. You don't have to keep coming here, I said one afternoon. We're not being watched by your family. Maybe we like your company, Felix said simply. Flynn nodded without looking up from his screen. Besides, your coworker makes excellent coffee. I'm here for the caffeine. Liar, I said, but I was smiling. One Saturday, they showed up at my apartment with takeout food and a stack of movies, claiming they'd decided I needed a break from working myself into exhaustion. This is ridiculous, I protested as Flynn pushed past me into my tiny living room. You could be doing literally anything else. We are doing what we want, Felix said, following his brother inside, which is making sure you actually relax for once. We spent the afternoon sprawled across my secondhand couch watching action movies and arguing about plot holes. Flynn threw popcorn at the screen during particularly stupid moments, while Felix provided commentary about cinematography. At some point, I fell asleep against Felix's shoulder, exhausted from my early morning shift, and woke up hours later to find a blanket draped over me and both twins still there, watching some sci-fi film with the volume low. Sorry, I mumbled. I didn't mean to pass out. Don't apologize, Felix said softly. You needed the rest. Things shifted after that. We started spending more time together beyond family obligations, falling into comfortable patterns that felt less like an arrangement and more like genuine friendship. They'd show up with food when I worked late. I'd send them terrible memes during their long business meetings. We'd meet for lunch or dinner or just to walk through the park where we'd first met. This isn't part of the deal, I said one evening as we sat by the fountain. You don't have to keep checking on me. Flynn stretched his arms over his head. What if we want to? Why would you want to? Because you're interesting, Felix said. And funny. And kind. And you don't treat us like we're just our family name or money. Plus you laugh at my jokes, Flynn added. That's rare and valuable. I picked at the grass beside the bench. I don't understand you two. You could have anyone. Why waste time on someone you're just pretending to date? They exchanged one of their looks again, the kind that held entire conversations I couldn't hear. Maybe it doesn't feel like pretending anymore, Felix said quietly. My heart did something complicated in my chest. What does that mean? It means we like you, Jasper, Flynn said, uncharacteristically serious. Not as our fake fiancé. As you. I stood up abruptly because this was too much, too fast, too confusing. This is part of the arrangement. You're paying me to pretend. That's all this is. Is that all it is for you? Felix asked. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to keep this simple and transactional and safe. But standing there looking at both of them, remembering every small moment of the past month, I couldn't lie. I don't know, I admitted. This is all so confusing. A month ago, I was with Trevor. Now I'm fake engaged to both of you, but it doesn't feel fake anymore, and I don't understand what's happening. Felix stood and moved closer, but didn't touch me. We don't have to figure it all out tonight. We're just being honest about how we feel. And how we feel is that we like spending time with you, Flynn added, joining us. Whether the engagement is fake or real doesn't change that. I looked between them. These two identical faces that had become so familiar I could tell them apart without thinking. Felix with his gentle smiles and careful words. Flynn with his energy and terrible jokes. Both of them somehow making my chaotic life feel steadier. I need time to think, I said. Take all the time you need, Felix assured me. Nothing has to change right now. But everything had already changed. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. The following week, Trevor showed up at my coffee shop during the afternoon shift. I was refilling the pastry case when I looked up and found him standing at the counter, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Jasper, he said, can we talk? Mira materialized at my elbow. Want me to kick him out? No, it's fine. I wiped my hands on my apron. What do you want, Trevor? I made a mistake, he said. Breaking up with you was stupid. I miss what we had. I stared at him, waiting to feel something. Anger or hurt or satisfaction that he'd come crawling back. But there was nothing except mild annoyance that he was interrupting my shift. What happened to Bennett? I asked. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. That didn't work out. He wasn't who I thought he was. You mean his money didn't make up for him being terrible? That's not fair. Neither was dumping me on my birthday in a public restaurant. I shot back. What do you actually want, Trevor? I want another chance. We were good together, Jasper. You know we were. We weren't, though. You spent 2 years pretending to care about me while waiting for someone better to come along. That's not a relationship. That's just using someone until you don't need them anymore. I'm sorry, he said, and he might have even meant it. I know I hurt you, but I'm willing to work on things if you are. I thought about Felix and Flynn and the way they'd shown up in my worst moment without expecting anything in return. How they'd spent weeks proving through small actions that they actually valued me as a person. How they made me laugh and checked on me and treated me like I mattered. I'm with someone else now, I told Trevor. 2 someone else's, actually. And they're better to me in a month than you were in 2 years. Those rich guys you're pretending to date. Trevor's expression turned ugly. Everyone knows that's fake, Jasper. You think I don't hear things? Maybe it started fake, I admitted. But it's not anymore. And even if it was, I'd rather have something pretend with people who respect me than something real with someone who doesn't. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was wasting 2 years on you. Now please leave before I ask my manager to make you. Trevor opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then seemed to think better of it. He turned and walked out, and I felt nothing but relief watching him go. Mira bumped my shoulder. You okay? Yeah. I surprised myself by meaning it. I really am. That evening I texted Felix and Flynn asking if they were free. They showed up at my apartment within 20 minutes, both looking concerned. Is everything all right? Felix asked as soon as I opened the door. Trevor came to the coffee shop, I said. He wanted to get back together. Flynn's expression darkened. What did you tell him? That I'm with both of you, and even if it started as pretend, it's not anymore. Silence stretched between us. Felix and Flynn looked at each other, then at me, then at each other again. What does that mean exactly? Felix asked carefully. I took a deep breath. It means I've spent the past month trying to convince myself this is just an arrangement. That when the 3 months are up, we'll all go our separate ways, and that'll be fine. But it's not fine. Because somewhere between family dinners and movie nights, and you two showing up during my shifts just to keep me company, I started actually caring about you. Both of you. And it terrifies me, but I can't keep pretending it's not happening. Jasper, Flynn said softly. I know this is complicated. I continued, words tumbling out faster now. I know your family expects you to find one person, and I'm probably not what they had in mind anyway. I know I'm still broke and working too many jobs and I don't fit in your world. But I can't keep lying about how I feel. Felix moved closer, stopping right in front of me. Can I tell you something? We never planned on this being fake. What? The arrangement was real, he explained. We needed someone to get our family off our backs. But from that first night in the park, we both felt something. Flynn and I talked about it constantly, trying to figure out if you felt it too, or if we were just projecting. We were terrified we'd scare you off, Flynn added. So we stuck to the arrangement and tried to be content with friendship. But then you'd smile at us or laugh at something stupid or fall asleep on Felix's shoulder, and we'd think maybe, possibly, you might feel something too. I looked between them. These 2 people who'd somehow become essential to my daily life without me noticing. So what happens now? Now we stop pretending, Felix said. If you want to. We understand if this is too much or too fast or too complicated. I want to, I said immediately. I'm scared and confused, but I want to try. With both of you. Flynn made this sound between a laugh and a sob. You have no idea how long we've waited to hear that. 2 months, I said. It's been 2 months. Longest 2 months of my life, he declared. Felix reached out and took my hand carefully, like I might shatter. We're going to take this slow. No pressure, no expectations. Just us figuring things out together. And telling your family? I asked. That it's actually real now? They already think it's real, Flynn pointed out. We just stopped lying about how it started. So that's what we did. The arrangement became real without any dramatic declarations or grand gestures. We just stopped pretending and let ourselves acknowledge what had been building between us all along. Family dinners became easier because I wasn't performing anymore. Robert's questions about my future felt less like tests and more like genuine interest. Victoria started inviting me to her garden club meetings, introducing me as her son's fiancé with something almost like pride. Violet declared herself my best friend and demanded regular updates about whether her brothers were being adequately romantic. They're doing fine, I assured her during one of our coffee dates. Just fine. She looked offended on their behalf. They bought you that fancy drawing tablet last week. That's better than fine. The tablet had been a complete surprise, appearing on my doorstep with a note that said, because you should spend more time creating and less time working yourself to death. It was expensive and thoughtful, and I'd maybe cried a little when I opened it. Okay, they're doing great, I amended. But don't tell them I said that. Their egos are big enough. Violet grinned. Your secret is safe with me. The 3-month mark of our arrangement came and went without acknowledgement. We were too busy actually living together to worry about arbitrary timelines. Felix and Flynn convinced me to quit my grocery store job so I could focus more on school and my design work. I argued, but eventually gave in when they pointed out I was exhausted constantly. We want you healthy and happy, Felix said, not running yourself into the ground. But I should be paying my own way, I protested. You will be, Flynn said, once you finish school and get the job you want. Until then, let us help. That's what partners do. Partners. The words settled over me like warmth, comfortable, and right. My design work improved with more time to focus. I started taking on freelance projects, building a portfolio that would help me land a real job after graduation. Felix and Flynn bragged about my work to everyone they met, showing off my designs like proud parents at a school art show. You're embarrassing, I told them after they spent 20 minutes showing my website to their business partners during a dinner party. We're proud, Felix corrected. There's a difference. 6 months after that first night in the park, we were having dinner at their apartment when Flynn suddenly got this weird look on his face. What? I asked. I just realized Trevor did us a favor, he said. Felix threw a napkin at him. Don't mention that waste of space. No, think about it, Flynn continued. If he hadn't been terrible enough to dump Jasper on his birthday in a public place, we never would have found him crying in that park. We'd still be suffering through awkward family dinners with people we didn't like. That's a depressing way to look at it, I said. I prefer to think of it as optimistic. Flynn grinned. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Felix raised his glass. To terrible ex-boyfriends and lucky coincidences. To actually caring about people for who they are instead of what they have, I added. To us, Flynn finished. However we happened. We clinked our glasses together, and I looked at these two people who'd saved me from one of my darkest moments and somehow become my entire world. The arrangement that was never really an arrangement. The pretending that was never really pretending. The love that grew out of heartbreak and kindness and countless small moments of choosing each other. My phone buzzed with a notification. My design professor had recommended me for an internship at a major publishing house doing book cover work. The exact thing I dreamed about during that terrible birthday dinner that felt like a lifetime ago. I got the internship, I said, staring at my screen in disbelief. Felix and Flynn were out of their seats immediately, wrapping me in a hug that felt like coming home. We knew you would, Felix said. Never doubted it for a second, Flynn agreed. I held on to both of them, grateful for every strange twist of fate that had led me here. Trevor's betrayal had destroyed me, but it had also freed me to find something infinitely better. These two people who saw value in me beyond what I could provide, who showed up consistently and cared genuinely and made me believe I deserved good things. The future stretched out ahead of us, uncertain and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. And that was more than enough. Hey, Thanks so much for sticking with me through this whole emotional journey. If you enjoyed watching Jasper find his happy ending with Felix and Flynn, maybe drop a like or subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. I really appreciate you being here. See you in the next one.